Horror sequels usually go one of two ways. They either repeat the formula or they blow it up. Ready or Not 2 doesn't repeat anything. It takes the original idea and pushes it into something much bigger. The question is, does that make it better or does it break what worked? The first Ready or Not was simple. One house, one night, one brutal game. This sequel expands everything. More locations, more players, higher stakes. And this time, Grace isn't alone. Samara Weaving returns, but now she's paired with Kathryn Newton as her sister. That changes the entire structure. It's no longer just about survival, it's about protecting someone else, while trying to survive something even bigger. The tone is still here. It's violent, it's fast, and it's still darkly funny. But it's also messier. Here, there's more mythology, more rules, and less of that tight, controlled tension from the first film. So if you're expecting the same experience, this isn't that. But if you want to see the idea pushed further, this definitely delivers. Welcome back to A Constantly Racing Mind, where we are going to a full spoiler review of Ready or Not, Here I Come. I'm Rob, and if you're into sci-fi, horror, action-adventure, prop culture, and all things geek, and deep dives into what works and what doesn't, you're in the right place. So here's where the movie goes. The Ladamas family was never the whole story. There's a larger network, multiple elite families, all tied to the same ritual, and Grace becomes the center of a new game, survive until dawn or die. But now, multiple groups are competing for control. The twist comes from a loophole. Grace can escape the game through marriage. After the Ladamas family's explosive finale, Grace is rushed to the hospital. However, she quickly learns that the Ladamases were just one small branch of a global high council of 6 elite families who all serve Mr. LaBelle. Because Grace survived, a secession clause is triggered. The other families must now hunt her down to claim the high seat. You know, the leadership of the entire cult. If Grace survives until dawn, she becomes the ruler of the council and effectively the world. Grace is reunited with her estranged sister, Faith, played by Kathryn Newton. Their relationship is tense. Faith feels abandoned by Grace, but they are forced to team up when they are kidnapped from the hospital and taken to a massive resort owned by the Danforth family. They are the primary antagonists, led by Ursula, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and her sadistic brother, Titus, Sean Hatosy. Their father is played by David Cronenberg. He doesn't last too long in the film. Elijah Wood plays the council's unnamed lawyer and Mr. LaBelle's representative, acting as dungeon master who ensures everyone follows the 15-pound book of rules. The kills are significantly more elaborate. One rival family member is boiled alive and another is impaled through the throat. A mid-movie highlight involves a high-stakes confrontation in a ballroom set to Total Eclipse of the Heart. In the final act, Titus kidnaps Faith to force Grace into a corner. Grace uses a loophole discovered by another council member. If she marries into one of the families of her own free will, the hunt ends, and that family takes the high seat. Then there's the wedding. Grace agrees to marry Titus to save Faith. Just after they are wed and Titus kisses the bride, Grace stabs him in the neck with a pen, citing his own earlier words. Nothing in the rules about killing your own family. Since the marriage was valid for a split second, Grace technically becomes the head of the council. The lawyer confirms she has infinite power. Grace immediately abdicates. She tosses the high seat sigil ring into a pit of goat corpses. Driven by greed, the remaining cult members dive into the pit to grab the ring. Because no one is wearing the ring when the sun rises, Mr. LaBelle is unhappy. In his signature Ready or Not finale, every single cult member in the pit and worldwide explodes into geysers of blood. Grace and Faith and a sacrificial goat walk out of the resort. The final shot mirrors the first film. Grace, covered in blood, shares a silent, respectful nod with Mr. LaBelle, who appears briefly in the smoke. He seems to view her not as a victim, but as the only player worth his time. And now I want to discuss Mr. LaBelle, the demon of the High Council. In the first film, LaBelle felt like a localized family curse. The sequel clarifies that he is a global architect of power. The name LaBelle is an anagram for Belial, a high-ranking demon, a devil in various mythologies. And as far as the High Council goes, the Ladamas family was merely one of the 6 branches of a global council. Each family member made a Faustian bargain with LaBelle. They received unfathomable wealth and political control. But in exchange, they must play the game and perform sacrifices to keep their end of the contract. Now, the high seat is a position of ultimate global authority confirmed by a gold signet ring. The movie reveals that Mr. LaBelle doesn't just want blood, he wants competence. He's bored by the weak, rich families and seems to genuinely respect Grace because she is the only one who wins the games through sheer will and intelligence. Throughout the film, everybody has to sign their name in blood in this ledger. It's a centuries-old contract between Mr. LaBelle and, as mentioned, is revealed to be Satan, Belial, and the world's most powerful families. Because Grace survived the Ladomas game, a high-seat vacancy was triggered. The other families have until dawn to finish the job to claim leadership of the council. Families must wait for the official start. One representative, Bill Wilkinson, played by Kevin Durant, tries to kill Grace early in the hospital and immediately explodes into gore. The ledger's penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct. And of course, there has to be a loophole. In this case, the marriage bypass. If Grace marries into an elite family member of her own free will, the hunt ends immediately, and the family wins the high seat. Blood pacts. To finalize the high seat, as mentioned, the winner must sign the black ledger in their own blood alongside their new family member, Grace. This sequel introduces more rival dynasties, each with its own business front. Now, in the film, David Cronenberg's character, Mr. Danforth, actually uses his connection to LaBelle to influence world events in real time. In one scene, he literally orders a ceasefire in a televised war via a quick phone call, showing that the high seat isn't just about money. It's about absolute geopolitical control. There are the Danforths, Ursula Sarah Michelle Gellar, and her brother Titus, Sean Hatosy, who are the primary villains. Old money sociopaths who operate out of a massive resort. Then there are the Rajans, headed by Martina Rajan, who attempts to play by the books, but is eventually wiped out or flees. She flees. There are the Zings, led by Chen Zing, played by Olivia Cheng. They are straight players who first reveal the marriage loophole to Grace. Finally, the Wilkinsons come and go, with Bill Wilkinson, the aggressive but short-lived leader, dying in the hospital opening. Now, I also want to talk about Elijah Wood, who plays the unnamed lawyer. He acts as the intermediary. He isn't a demon himself, but a high-level servant who knows the Black Ledger, the massive book of rules LaBelle establishes centuries ago. But I think there may be more to his casting than just a devil's lawyer. Elijah Wood's most notable role is, okay, everyone, say it. Say it. Frodo Baggins. What is Frodo in charge of? Yes, the One Ring of Power. How did Frodo handle this responsibility? Well, it was touch and go throughout 3 films. If it weren't for Gollum, Frodo would have failed. In essence, he did. In both films, they use the ring in the same way. It represents power. It comes with a cost. And the real test is whether the character chooses to keep it. In Ready or Not 2, Grace gets the ring and chooses to throw it away. In Lord of the Rings, Elijah Wood, as Frodo, carries the ring and ultimately can't let it go. Frodo fails at the final moment. Grace succeeds. Frodo is consumed by the system. Grace rejects it entirely. If the One Ring is about how power corrupts, this movie flips it because Grace wins by refusing the power altogether. The directors, or creative leads, like in Project Hail Mary, there are 2 directors for this film, Matt Bertinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. Together they are both of the filmmaking group Radio Silence. These are the same directors as the first film, known for blending horror, humor, and fast pacing. They also worked on Scream 2022 and Scream 6, and left after the firing of Melissa Barrera after that. The primary focus is continuity. The tone and style is familiar. The script is brought to us by Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murray. They wrote the original Ready or Not. They also worked on modern horror like Scream 7, so we can expect the same mix of satire, gore, and dark humor. These are the people shaping how the movie feels, the look, the rhythm, and the sound. And across the board, they come from fast modern, a horror that prioritizes clarity and momentum. Now here we get into the cast. Samara Weaving still carries the movie, but what's intriguing is how different the performances feels this time. She's built a reputation in horror for playing characters who feel alive under pressure. Samara's key horror roles, Ready or Not, is raw survival, her panic turned into control. Then there's that final scream laugh that defined the role. In The Babysitter, controlled chaos, charisma mixed with menace. She plays dangerously with a smile. Scream 6, like many before her in the opening sequence, which is a short role, but shows how well she handles tension quickly. In Azrael, Samara Weaving strips everything back. No dialogue, just pure physical performance, and still carries the entire film through presence alone. So what does she bring to this film? Well, this isn't the same Grace. She's more controlled, more strategic, less reactive. It feels like someone who already understands the rules, and that's the shift. Film 1 was survival. 2 is navigate. She's not panicked anymore. She is choosing. In Ready or Not, Here I Come, it's exactly that. Weaving's strength is that she never feels like a typical final girl. She can be messy, she can be angry, she can be darkly funny, and that keeps the character grounded even when the movie gets bigger. Samara Weaving doesn't just survive horror, she adapts to it. And this time she's already ahead of the game. Kathryn Newton is the biggest addition, and she brings a very different kind of energy. She's been building toward this role across multiple horror projects since Freaky. Balanced comedy and fear, played both victim and aggressor. Abigail, same directing team, showed she can handle ensemble chaos and tension. 14 years ago in Paranormal Activity 4, Kathryn Newton grounds the chaos. She played it real, which makes everything around her feel more unsettling. Even early on, you can see it, Kathryn Newton's strength and reaction. She made the fear feel real. Here in Ready or Not 2, she's the emotional anchor, more reactive, more expressive. Feels like someone dropped into something she doesn't understand. Therefore, she gives the audience a point of entry, a reason to care beyond survival, and become invested in the dynamic with Grace, which in my mind makes the sequel work. Grace is experienced, while Faith is overwhelmed. That contrast creates tension in almost every scene. We know families are complicated, which means their relationship is not clean. There's resentment, there's history, there's friction, and I think that keeps it from feeling like a typical protected sibling setup. It works for me because Newton's strength is reaction. She sells the fear, she sells the confusion, and she makes the chaos feel real, which balances out Weaving's control. Newton brings the human side of the story, the part that still reacts like this shouldn't be happening. Other notable cast members that fall into the horror genre are Kevin Durand from The Strain on TV, Resident Evil Retribution, Elijah Wood, Maniac, The Faculty, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and The Grudge, and David Cronenberg, Shivers, The Fly, and Crimes of the Future. Check out my review of that film, a true modern horror of existential proportions. Because the lawyer survived, unlike the families, the lawyer and his associates do not explode because they aren't part of the blood pact families. They are employees. This means that the infrastructure of LaBelle's games still exists. Since the council is global, there are likely other families and other game boxes out there. But who knows? There weren't any mid or after credit scenes, so I'm thinking this is the end of the franchise. So before I tell you what my final thoughts are, let's check in with what the Critic aggregate scores say. As this is still opening week, Ready or Not had to go up against Project Hail Mary. Go ahead and see my spoiler and non-spoiler reviews on that film. And Scream 7 and Undertone are still in theaters. I did reviews on those as well. I'm sure that within this coming week, scores will stabilize, and if you use those to determine how you spend your money, good luck. Currently, Ready or Not, Here I Come is landing in the solid but divisive range. Low 70s on Rotten Tomatoes, low 60s on Metacritic. So critics like it, but they're not at all on the same page. On Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is 72%, but the audience score is 78%. Critics are split, but leading positive. However, audience numbers are slightly higher, with fans of the first film showing up. Most critics agree that the film was fun, chaotic, and expanded the concepts. I totally agree. However, it loses the tension and simplicity of the original. On Metacritic, the scores are slightly lower. The critic score is approximately 62 out of 100, while the user scores remain around 7.2 out of 10. Metacritic is more mixed than Rotten Tomatoes and falls into generally favorable but inconsistent territory. Currently, IMDb is showing the user rating at 7.1 out of 10. Solid but not a breakout. I think critics like Samara Weaving's performance, as it is still very strong. Well, what did I think? This is a bigger movie. In some ways that helps, in other ways it pulls away from what made the first one special. The tension is lower, but the ideas are larger. And whether that works for you will come down to one thing. Do you want the story to stay simple, or are you okay with evolving into something more chaotic? For me, this works more than it doesn't. Barely. But it's not as tight as the original. But I did think that the two women leads had excellent sibling chemistry. Watching people die is fun in a twisted way. The blood-soaked joke is starting to wear thin, but it still worked for this film. I like Ready or Not, Here I Come, which is a solid 3 out of 5. If you made it this far, hit the like and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you think. Check out the merch store if you want to support the channel directly. And if you're heading to the theater, don't forget to check out Run P so you don't miss anything important. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.